Hello there, and welcome to the Paranormal Puffin, a potent puffin sideshow. Now, I'm your host, Jake Thomas. Now, this week, I'll be discussing a particular cryptid that is often associated with the Appalachian Mountains, but has been found as far as the Midwest and into some southern states. And it has a very interesting history, in my opinion. And this creature would be none other than the Wampus Cat. Now, the Wampus Cat is interesting to me because it has several kind of origin stories. Two of them kind of contradict each other in a way. They have some confliction, but they also provide some interesting insight to the creature. And another interesting fact about the Wampus Cat that isn't really in the sense of the cat itself, but just something interesting about it is the mascot of the high school in my hometown. Not the high school I went to, but the town that I'm from. The high school there, their mascot is the Wampus Cats. That would be Conway High in Conway, Arkansas. So that's interesting. So I kind of grew up near the Wampus Cat in a sense. My brother went to that high school, and so I went to a lot of games and get to see the really cool Wampus Cat statue that they have. And so now let's get into what is the Wampus Cat. Now, the Wampus Cat is essentially a cat often described similar to a regular cougar or mountain lion, but they have the ability to walk on hind legs like a person, and they also are often associated with having the ability to cause a lot of confusion and like a person to like kind of go crazy in a sense. And another interesting fact is if you hear their howl, it's often been believed that if you hear its howl or whine, that means there's going to be a death of some kind in the next 3 days. Not necessarily yours, but maybe someone around you, or just someone in your community. It often signifies death within 3 days. So that's interesting. And according to some sources, it has a very bad odor about it, which is pretty common for a lot of cryptids. But the particular reason that the Wampus Cat is believed to have a foul odor is as it's only been seen at night. It's believed it only comes out at night, and that during the day it lives in sewers. I find that kind of odd because, in my mind, the Wampus Cat is more of a being outside kind of cryptid. It's not something that I initially think of as being something that would be in the sewers. But that is one belief. So that's pretty interesting. And they often are described as being black in appearance, like dark jet black. Sorry, Conway High, they are not blue usually, but they are often described as being black in appearance with yellow eyes. And so, given that, I'm going to go into some of the common ideas of where the Wampus Cat came from. So, first, the name kind of comes from the term cattywampus, which is, depending on where you're from, could have a couple different meanings. So, cattywampus generally, in my mind, is describing something that's kind of wonky. It's not quite right. You know, it's like something's off about it. It's all cattywampus. It could also mean something that's just been put in a corner. So there's that, just kind of just in a corner. I don't really think, I've never thought of that as being cattywampus. Cattywampus is usually something that's off. And then it could also come from describing just an unknown animal that is abnormal or strange, that's unidentifiable. So for some people, cattywampus just means that animal is not real. It's just unexplained. And so over time, I can see where that could come into being describing the Wampus Cat and evolving into Wampus Cat, especially since the word catamount, which is also similar in pronunciation to cattywampus, is a term that is used for cougars and lynx. And given that these are often found in the Appalachians, it's where they're mostly associated with. It makes sense because there were cougars there once, but their numbers have dwindled. I'm not even sure if there's still a wild cougar population or not. So that could be where the terms for Wampus Cat comes from. But now, for the creature itself, it's often put into origins from tales of the Cherokee. So there's two origins of the Wampus Cat that are Cherokee involved. The first is a Cherokee legend about this demon spirit. I believe it's pronounced Ewal. He was the spirit of madness, and this one tribe or one group of Cherokee, they had this spirit of madness. This demon was feeding on the dreams of the children, I believe, and that's kind of where it got its powers. And this demon, if you came in contact with it, it had the power to drive you insane. And so the elders and the shaman and the war chiefs of this tribe, they all got together like, we got to stop this, but we can't just go send all our warriors out to fight this demon. We have to do it a different way. So they chose their strongest, smartest, quickest, brave. His name was, I believe, Standing Bear, or it could be Great Fellow, depending on the source. But he's the top dog of the group, and they chose him to go fight this demon. And so they got him ready. He goes out, and he's gone for several weeks. And his wife, Running Deer, is concerned for him because he's gone for so long. And eventually, Standing Bear comes back. But when he comes back, he is scratching at his eyes. His eyes are gone black. And he's like scratching at him like he's trying to pull them out. And instantly they knew that he had been defeated by Iwa, this spirit of madness, and that he had gone mad himself. And because of this condition, he was legally dead by the Cherokee customs of the day. And so he could no longer go about his duties. He was able to get to where he could pick berries and like gather wheat and kind of things of that nature with the young girls and the widows. But he was no longer this dominant brave that he once was. And well, Running Deer, she is very upset about this. She's sad for her husband, and she wants revenge on this demon for causing her husband to become like this and to lose his status. And so she goes to the war chiefs and the shamans, and they come up with a plan. They're going to allow Running Deer to go and fight this demon herself. So they give her a booger mask, which is, to my understanding, is kind of like, it's a mask that represents a demon that they use to ward them off in, like, portray them in different rituals. And they give her the head of a bobcat as a mask, which, according to the legend, Ewa's one weakness was the spirit of the bobcat. So they equip her with this bobcat mask, and then I believe they gave her some kind of like black tar to help mask her scent. And so, Running Deer, she goes out into the woods, and a few days go by, and she hasn't found this demon yet. And then she notices these strange footprints by a riverbed. And then, along with these footprints, is the breastplate of her husband. So she knows that it must be Ewa. And she and she follows these tracks, and she finds this spirit of madness demon. And she sneaks up behind it, doing her best to remain stealthy and not be seen. And then when Ewa finally notices, he goes to attack her, but she presents this bobcat, the head of this bobcat, to it. And when it does, the Ewa's magic that causes the madness reversed and drove Ewa mad, and he fell into this pool of water. And essentially, that was the last of Ewa. And so then, Running Deer, she returns to the village, and the shaman, the war chiefs, they're all happy. The village is now safe. The children aren't having their dreams eaten by this demon. And supposedly, they did something, and now Running Deer's spirit has been allowed to fuse with that of the bobcat, and she was left to continue roaming the hills to ensure that this demon never returned. And that is the Wampus Cat, is Running Deer. And it's her out there protecting her village and her people from this demon or any new threats that may come. And I really like that story. It's a interesting story. It it shows a lot of stuff to it, and it provides a good explanation of the Wampus Cat. It's actually kind of a protector in a way, and that could, in a sense, see why the Wampus Cat attacks some people or takes some, livestock. Is because it's these people who weren't on their land before, and it sees new settlers or, people of today as encroaching on her ancestral lands, and she's going to protect that. Another story that involves the Cherokee is the most common legend, I think. It's the one I've always heard in regards to the Wampus Cat. And this one is pretty simple. This woman, she didn't want to mind her own business, basically. So the men of her tribe, including her husband, they were out on a sacred hunting trip where they shared various stories and secrets, and they told things that only the circle of people was supposed to know. And she wanted to know what went on during these hunting trips. So she snuck along. And one night, while they're at their fire telling their stories and telling these secrets, she hides under these cougar pelts so she can hear. And, well, she gets caught. And so one of the shaman, he uses his magic and infuses the cougar pelts to her, and she's banished to never be around people again. And so she's just wandering, and she's, pretty much a hybrid human cougar now. And so that would explain why she's able to walk on her hind legs. And I find that interesting because it pretty much contrasts with the other story of Running Deer. Because in that story, the man kind of fell and the woman came in and she was the savior. In this story, it's the opposite. It kind of reinforces certain stereotypes that we have in our culture, where the woman was out of her place and the man kind of punished her for that. And so there are there's a lot of underlying differences there, but they both provide interesting sights on the Wampus Cat and what it is. And some sources even state that the woman who was fused with the bobcat pelts as the punishment state that she is actually what became Iwa. So I find that kind of interesting. Yet that story, from my research, didn't come about until much later in time. So I don't know, but I think the story of Running Deer is uh more likely the true origin of the Wampus Cat. And another origin of the Wampus Cat that I have heard is that it is a witch who lives in the woods, and she transforms herself into a cat, into like a mountain lion or cougar, in order to steal chicken and poultry or whatever livestock might be around, so that she has food to eat. And so that kind of is interesting, that most the stories of the Wampus Cat and how it came to be are all come from women becoming this creature in some way, whether it be in the role of protector or as punishment, or they're just a witch and they want to eat, and so that's how they get their food. But nonetheless, it is a very terrifying thing to come across in the woods, as it can cause you to kind of go insane. It can. Oh, I kind of forgot what I was saying there for a second. And it can, you know, walk like a person. So it could confuse you at what you're seeing at first. And that could be another reason why it makes you go insane, because it confuses you with what you're seeing. You might see a cougar walking or a mountain lion walking on its hind legs, and it might confuse you, and that could set off some of the hysteria. And then, too, if you hear its noise, it could signify that there's going to be a death soon, and that alone is pretty scary. And so that's interesting. Now, going back to the physical appearance of the Wampus Cat, it's often said to have, to the general size of a regular cougar or mountain lion, with the ability to stand on its hind legs. And the coloring can range from being jet black, like I mentioned before, to being similar to that of just a normal cougar mountain lion. But another distinguishing feature of the Wampus Cat, depending on source, and I don't know where this started, but this is kind of the version that Conway High takes. And for a while I thought it was just something that Conway High did to create a more unique mascot, but as I've looked into the Wampus Cat more, I've seen other sources that have it like this as well. And it's the fact that the Wampus Cat has 6 legs. Now, the purpose of having 6 legs, according to Conway High again, is there's 4 to run and 2 to fight with all its might, which makes sense. You can bat stuff away while it's trying to move more quickly. But when you think about these origins of it, whether it's the Cherokee woman who's been fused with the pelts or the spirit of Running Deer, it would seem that could be why there's 6 legs. Because once it fuses, she has the bobcat legs along with her regular human arms potentially, and then the bobcat hind legs fuse with the human legs, and there's 6 legs right there. That could, I think it makes sense to me that that's why it has 6 legs, and it goes along with the origin. Makes sense. But I just think that's interesting. So that's kind of the Wampus Cat. And I'm just going to go real briefly over a few other kind of cryptids that kind of fit along with the Wampus Cat a little bit. Not too much, but one is the Ozark howler, which is kind of like described as being like a bear, dog, cat with horns, and that's found in Oklahoma, Missouri, and I think parts of Tennessee maybe, but really just this little area of the Ozarks. And it's kind of interesting because sometimes it's described as being cat-like, and its howl is also associated with death. So it makes sense to me that maybe they are one and the same, and just because of regional variances, there's been a difference. And so that would be why it's still, kind of like feline in some ways, but not in others. It has other features that separate it, but I think they could be coming from similar origins. So I think that's interesting. That's one that I need to do more research on myself. It's weird because I grew up kind of like the foothills of the Ozarks, but I don't know much about the Ozark howler itself. And so, yeah, I'm going to do more research on that one. So that'll be interesting. That'll be fun. And that's all I really got for this week. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, give me a subscribe, follow, do all that. Check out the Potent Puffin as well. And I'll be getting a write-up on the Wampus Cat up onto the Potent Puffin blog pretty soon, if I haven't already by the time this releases. But looking forward to that. And if you feel in a good mood, give me a review or leave a comment, something, and let me know what you think. And I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Paranormal Puffin, coming out every third Friday of the month.